Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at a piece of text posted on Quora by a guy. If you guys follow my Facebook, know that he constantly posts really stupid stuff about evolution. This is his entire rant. This is where he gets most of his copy-paste content from for Facebook. Or at least he put it all together, and we're just going to go over it and see what it says. We're going to be reducing and just getting rid of anything that has absolutely nothing to do with evolution, and see what we have left and what evidence he actually presents, because as we know, if you follow him, he doesn't really present any evidence. And so we're just going to be briefly nuking everything out of this. I've copied and pasted. It's from his French Quora site, and I'll post a link if you want to go check and make sure that I have not actually done him any type of disservice. So without any further ado, let's get started with his brief refutation study of the illusion and myth of the theory of evolution. He is not a native English speaker, as near as I can tell, so we're not going to fault him for spelling. We're not going to fault him for bad grammar. We're not going to fault him for a lot of things that could be put down to his inability to speak English as fluently as someone who speaks it natively. But we're also going to see that he really doesn't have any good critical thinking skills. He's never had to write a technical paper. It doesn't really look like. And so some of the things we're going to try and talk about will be these kinds of things. It's just an ability to put together a coherent set of thoughts, which is problematic. So anyway, so we're going to just go paragraph by paragraph. We're starting with 6,294 words, 38,883 characters. We'll see how much we have left when we're done. I'm not expecting a whole lot. So we start with, when trying to talk about biology in general, or biological education in particular, as lessons in educational curricula, this is often accompanied by on what is known as a theory of evolution, which is a theory formulated by Charles Darwin and which has been included in the global biological education system. This is fluff. It's an intro piece. As such, it's kind of necessary. But it doesn't do anything to advance it. So I'm deleting it just simply for that reason, not because it's anything more than an introduction. We could talk about the fact that Charles Darwin is dead, that biology has grown by leaps and bounds in the intervening century or more than a century, really, and that the theory of evolution that he came up with is really just kind of old and outdated. We have updated it, biologists have updated it quite a bit. There's a lot of things he didn't know, starting with genes. He didn't know what genes were, although that came out while he was alive. But he didn't know about ERVs. He didn't know about errors in copying those genetics. He didn't know a lot of stuff that we know today. And so his definition of evolution and today's are very, very different. I think he would be very fascinated by it all. But again, he's dead. And basically we could just kind of rule it, we know what's going to happen now, right? He's talking about a dead guy who hasn't had a chance to update his information since he died. And going to be comparing that and thinking that that's where knowledge stopped. And that is, of course, complete bullshit. But this is just an introduction, so, we can not really rake him over the coals too far. And it's not possible to find a student or researcher specializing in biology who is not familiar with this theory. But has anyone interested in biology ever done research about, investigated what the theory is, what are the origins of its formulation, how it was reached, and what the arguments, proofs, and applied experiment on which it relies, or with interest in studying the psychological state of the owner of that theory? So here he says, this is just an example of his lack of critical thinking skills. Student or researcher specializing in biology. Has anyone interested ever done research about what the theory is? You've answered your own question here, and I don't understand why you don't see that. This is a pretty bad piece of of logic here. It doesn't really follow. And what does the psychological state of the owner? There is no owner of the theory, right? So that's problematic language right there. This clearly indicates he doesn't know what theories are, doesn't know how they work in science, if he thinks that any one person owns the theory. I think he probably really meant to say originator of that theory or founder of the theory or anything along those lines, which would be accurate, but owner is not accurate. And the psychological state of the owner has absolutely nothing to do with the evidence presented and the claims made. Um, None. He could be batshit insane, and if his facts are right and his evidence is good, then his hypothesis is valid. Then he could be completely insane. I think we actually have a mathematician who Beautiful Mind. The movie Beautiful Mind comes to mind. Uh, he was crazy, but his math was good. Um, and I use crazy, and I really shouldn't. I mean, he did. I don't remember what his what he had, but I really should. Uh, but that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that his math was good. Just like it doesn't have anything to do with whether his observations were valid and whether Charles Darwin's evidence was good. Doesn't matter what his psychological state is. This is just going to be. I mean, he's setting up the ad hominem here. Rather than attack the evidence, he attacks the man. So he's setting that up here. So this paragraph right here is very indicative of what is to come. Just the lack of logic, and of course not understanding what evidence is, not understanding that psychological state doesn't make any difference if the evidence is correct, if the evidence is sufficient to warrant belief in a hypothesis or in a claim. So we get rid of that. That doesn't do anything. This did not happen often, except for some criticism or points of view. The religion that justifies the impossibility of evolution under the pretext of creation, i.e., the lack of pure scientific research that questions the validity or denies evolution. As for me, in this short research, I tried not to rely on any religious argument. This run-on sentence that ends in an ellipsis, I see a lot of people, I use ellipses too, but I try to use them correctly. And this is not the correct use of ellipses here in this case. It did not happen often. Okay, again, he's referring to the paragraph we just deleted. And yet, when Darwin first published, his views were very controversial. Now, he didn't publish anything all that radical for what was known at the time. He just provided a boatload of evidence for that. And that's fine. But none of this, I mean, I can show you. I'll post some links to some journals that go back to the early 1900s. There may be journals that are older than that, and we can look at a lot of the letters and other things that back at the time where Darwin was defending his point of view, and then over time, his evidence became more and more irrefutable. We figured out what genes were and how genes work. And we now have more and more evidence that evolution is simply a fact. And so this is just simply a complete total lack of knowledge of anything regarding evolution and its history. So it's just complete garbage. And then this last sentence kind of tells us where he's coming from, right? And the fact that he says here, points of view, the religion that justifies, right? I think he's trying to intimate here somehow that evolution is a religion. Clearly he doesn't know what religions are, clearly he doesn't know what theories are, and clearly he is coming from a religious point of view, otherwise he wouldn't say this. He has been accused of being a young earth creationist and of being, I mean, I think he's Islamic actually, but coming from a religious point of view. And the fact of the matter is most of the criticisms of the bad criticisms of evolution and the attempts to disprove evolution come from folks with a religious axe to grind. It doesn't come from the scientific community as a whole. So we just delete that because that doesn't do anything. No, wait, let me put that back. comma, but with the intention. Now, this type of thing where we see this comma in our new paragraph might be my copy-paste job. Just to point that out in case any of you are thinking about commenting on it. Don't. It could be my copy-paste job. And then when I put it into my note-taking app, it may have added these in for whatever reason. I don't know. So I'm not going to comment too much on this stuff because it doesn't really matter. But since it continues on here, and this is obviously continuation, let's just put this up here. But with the intention of refuting the theory of evolution, I am in this research. Cool. We're going to actually see actual research. Resorted to using arguments and scientific proofs and interest in psychological analysis to reveal the truth of the theory of evolution. Good. I hope to see some evidence that actually refutes evolution. But we've already see that he probably isn't. He doesn't really critically think, so his arguments are probably going to be bad, just from what we've read so far. Even trying to, as much as possible, steelman his inability to speak English to try to make sense of what he is. Now, part of the problem is that when I try to actually steelman his position, I may not actually be steelmanning it. If his thought process and his inability to speak English is bad enough, we may not be able to correctly interpret what he was trying to say. So, but we're going to do our best. As a topic of the general research is comparative, analytical, and critical comment, such as discussing the reasons and motives that were the reasons for formulating the theory, accompanied by... So again, the reasons and motives don't matter. This is just attacking the person who did it, not attacking any of the evidence. This is basically a bad appeal to authority or disauthority, because this guy was crazy, because this guy had some nefarious motive, means that his evidence is bad. No, doesn't mean that at all. You got to look at the evidence and attack the evidence. So again, we're just doing more setting up of his ad hominem attacks. Note, everything contained in this booklet does not have any religion, right? So he's got to say it several times. And again, part of this may be that he got tired of being attacked on he's just another young earth creationist. He's just another religion. So we'll see how that goes. But honestly, again, most people who try to deny evolution are religiously motivated, because it does, I mean, it doesn't ruin it for all Christians. Probably doesn't ruin, evolution doesn't stand against most Christian theology. If you say that no matter how it happened, God did it, like the Catholic Church does, then there's no reason to think that the theory of evolution does anything to your belief in God. It's only a fundamentalist who believes in the books are word for word true does evolution actually poke a hole in that. But it only pokes a hole in those parts of the book that you interpret literally that stand against evolution. So if you believe, for instance, that Adam and Eve were created by God and were the first creation and not evolved from other creatures, then evolution stands directly opposed to your beliefs. If you believe that that story is a metaphor, well, it doesn't. So it just really depends on all of that. So continuing on. When Charles Darwin wrote the Book of Origin of Species, he talked about the common source of the life of organisms and that they stem from a single cell. And then he began using strange sayings such as the evolution of the life of organism, the transition from one state to another, and the shedding of one stage to another. In other words, that the existing organisms are copies of the ancestors of other organisms that lived millions of years ago, but evolved and differed in physiological and morphological structure. And all of this has no effect of validity and is not justified by real results, but rather they're just illusions and myths written by Charles Darwin in a somewhat nervous and psychological state. His writings on evolution have no scientific biological character, but are in fact closer to a literary novel of a fictional biological. Wow. Let's see if we can actually unpack this somehow. And once again, we have an ellipsis for no reason. And this is one giant run-on sentence. Wow. So again, we're going to have to try common source. He wrote about the common source of life, organisms they stem from a single cell. I actually don't know that Charles Darwin did that. That is certainly, I mean, we probably do all trace ourselves back to a single cell organism that eventually became multicellular, etc., on and on. So that is probably true in modern biology. Whether Darwin actually said it, I don't know. First time I've actually seen that claim. But it is true I believe, for modern biology to say that. And then he began using strange sayings such as the evolution of the life of organism. What does he mean, strange saying? Nothing Darwin said was really out of character for some of the things that were being thought about. He was just the first one to actually go and do some studying on it and publish Origin of Species, which is what modern biology is based on. The transition from one state to another and the shedding that the existing are copies. So he's not even accurately describing evolution in any way, shape, or form. Transition from one state to another, I don't even know what that means in the context of evolution, because evolution is not states. We are all transitional forms, and every living creature is a transitional form. There is no finite or discrete state in evolution. There aren't that many discrete states in nature, much less evolution, but this doesn't make any sense. Shedding from one stage to another, I think he's just repeating himself using different words. I really don't know. I wish I did. This doesn't make any sense. But then he goes on to try and clarify, yet again, that the existing organisms are copies for their ancestors of other organisms that lived. So, I mean, it depends on what you mean by copy. We are all chordata. We all have spinal cords, and every organism that has a spinal cord has a common ancestor that first created the spinal cord. Now, it is possible that the spinal cord could have evolved in multiple species at the same time for various reasons, but I believe the current thinking is that we all come from one animal that first started working, building that, what we would call a spinal cord. So we're not exact copies of anything. And so if he means exact copies, that's just not true. You can't get that from the theory of evolution. You can't do any of that. And yes, over time, millions of years, differed in physiological and morphological structure. Yeah, sure. And is not just, has no effective validity. I have no idea what he means by this. Not justified by real results. What do you mean, real results? We can see that just by observation, which is what Charles Darwin did. He happened to look at finches that are isolated by the ocean. These are real results. And so then we get into his, again, an ad hominem attack against Charles Darwin. He doesn't actually attack any of these results. We don't see any mention of the finches. We don't see any mentions of anything that he talks about in Origin of Species. And attacking Origin of Species really doesn't do much to attack evolution. It does quite a bit to attack their thinking at the time. But again, our thinking has changed as we find out new and better stuff. So, closer to a literary novel of fictional biological. I have no idea what fictional biological is. I don't even know how to steelman that. But a literary novel, no, it really doesn't. It was actually pretty good scientific writing for the time. So, yeah, all of this is just complete garbage from the beginning to the end. Because if evolution really takes place, and what Charles Darwin formulated and invoked was true, then why would we not see in our current life the evolution of organism, their adoption of other biological forms and states? For example, such as seeing a human being evolve in another form or an animal, it transforms into physical biological structures. Others, and why also the bodies of mummies that archaeologists obtained during the last century in Egypt, which passed more than 3,000 years and nearly 5,000 years, have the same body size as we are now. No. Evolution really does take place. What Charles Darwin came up with is actually true. We knew this from a large number of, I mean, just from the finches alone. But I mean, we can see that in a whole bunch of body plans. We can see that everywhere. Evolution is why modern uh, antibiotics work. But let's take a look. Evolution of organisms and their so we have several examples, modern examples of evolution in the wild. One of them, entertainingly enough, involves Darwin's finches from the Galapagos. A finch from one island got blown, and I'll post a link to this so you can check it out. It's kind of cool. But a finch from one island blew onto another island, had sex with one of the finches on the new island, and all of their descendants are a new species. They tried to get the original two species uh, to spawn. They used artificial insemination to attempt to get the new species to breed with the old ones and couldn't. That's kind of the definition of species. So if you can't get them to breed new species, we've seen that happen in 3 generations. Doesn't always take a long time. This is a bit of a weird one. And so there's evolution into a new species. Thank you. We've had another one that is also kind of on the weird side. Russian sturgeon and American paddlefish. Now, Russian sturgeon come from Russia. Paddlefish are here in the States. These two fish are separated not only by millions of years of evolution, but also distance. People breeding them didn't think those two fish could breed together because, after all, they're from very, very different places. And yeah, we now have some very, very ugly fish that are the mating pair of those two. Again, I'll post links to this. There's some new species happening there. Again, they don't apparently are not apparently able to breed with the original species. So again, we have speciation there. We have this all over the place. So we do have morphological changes. We have examples of a species evolving an eye and then de-evolving an eye. Some of those are existing today. And so we have all of these things. The fact that he doesn't know this is just a testament to his own ignorance of what's happening in biology. And why haven't humans evolved much? Because we haven't had enough time. 3,000 years is nothing. It's a number of generations. I will say that we have gotten taller. Some of that is due to better diet. And we have seen changes, minor ones, as we would expect, but no, we've not seen a speciation event within the human species. Now, I will say that there is a tribe of humans that spend 5 hours a day in the ocean. They have larger spleens and other small adaptations to the aquatic life they live, but they're not a new species yet because they can still interbreed with other humans. Were they to actually stop being able to breed with other humans, then we would have a new speciation right there. So that will be interesting to see what happens. So we do see some of this. It's just not what you would expect. And the fact that you would even claim this means that you don't understand evolution. You don't understand how it works. And it has absolutely nothing to do. Just isn't evidence against evolution. And we have a comments on the reality of Darwin and Richard Dawkins on the reality of educational practice in biology. I think we just delete this because I don't know why that comma is there. It doesn't fit with the rest of it. So I think we just go ahead and delete this. This doesn't appear to be, this comments on the reality doesn't appear to be a continuation of a thought. Comments on the reality of Darwin and Richard Dawkins and the reality of educational practice of biology. This has absolutely nothing. It's connector, but doesn't really advance anything. It is necessary for the paper you need connecting sentences and paragraphs sometimes that don't do much except connect two things together. I don't really think he's trying to connect two things together there, but we'll see what happens. Darwin used to sort the correct biological manuscripts that depend on a scientific method devoid of illusion and myth of evolution, and added to them statements about evolution. Every biological manuscript that was before Darwin did not contain the illusion. Well, I mean, duh. We didn't have a good handle on what evolution was before Darwin. But to say that every biological manuscript before Darwin didn't contain the myth of evolution is just simply not understanding what the general consensus of science was. There were people who were proposing various evolutionary hypotheses at that time. Darwin's book just went farther than anybody else did in providing evidence. It was well written. So, yeah, of course not, because Darwin really put it out there. Nobody else did. But Darwin didn't really do anything terrifyingly new. He just provided the evidence and clarified a lot of stuff that people were thinking at the time. So this is just utter bullshit and has absolutely no bearing on anything, and just really is not scientific, not factual. Clearly shows he's done no research whatsoever into what the thoughts were when Darwin is alive. The real biography of Darwin proves that he belonged to a group that misrepresents and misleads science. Richard Dawkins at the present time continues to spread biological lies that have no... So, here's a claim, and I don't know where Richard Dawkins all of a sudden came from, but none of this actually attacks any of the evidence for evolution. This is just an ad hominem. No evidence that he belonged to a group that misrepresents and misleads science. No evidence of no group name, nothing to get research, nothing to do here. This is just a bald-faced assertion based on caca. So we will give it the exactly what it deserves. Okay, ignorance and literacy in the current area is belief of the evolution myth, the theory of evolution. Correct biological cannot, and his follower Richard Dawkins. Okay, so this is if you actually manage to disprove evolution, you might be able to say, hey, we need to stop doing this. But again, this is just more caca. This doesn't do anything to disprove evolution. It is absolutely garbage. Just more claims. He doesn't define what correct biological education is, although we can guess that it is the current biological education minus evolution, and how that's going to work, I don't really know, because evolution is an underpinning of almost everything we understand about biology. So that's garbage. Get rid of that. The theory of evolution is nothing but the product of a psychological condition that Charles Darwin suffered from, which is psychological and nervous disorders. And as a young boy, he suffered from zoophobia, and the dreams and nightmares that he had as a result of his psychological condition are what led him towards devising a myth and the illusion of evolution. And if Sigmund Freud had cared about the psychological state of Charles Darwin, he would have come to know what is known as Darwin's complex. One of the most prominent sufferers of Darwin's complex is Richard Dawkins. Wow, what a load of utter bullshit. So, do we know anything about Charles Darwin's psychological state or nervous disorders? Certainly can't diagnose them. And this guy certainly does not have the credentials to diagnose anybody with any type of mental disorder. And I don't know anybody else's. And then notice is Sigmund Freud cared about. How do you know that Sigmund Freud even knew Charles Darwin? I don't even think they come from the same century, dude. And certainly Sigmund Freud, this is more ad hominem bullshit from someone who can't think straight. If Richard Dawkins really respects science, the best he can do is announce the fact that the theory of evolution is just an illusion, a lie, and a myth promoted by Darwin during the suffering. Right. So again, you haven't proven anything here, and so calling on anybody to do anything is absolutely ridiculous. But this is bullshit. So we'll just delete it because it's ridiculous. Saying students receiving biological education mixed with the illusion and myth of evolution is truly an affirmation that ignorance, illiteracy, and scientific still dominate the global education system. Bullshit. You still haven't disproven evolution. You've just made a couple of claims that you were not qualified to make, and you've provided no evidence that someone qualified to make those claims has said those things. And more importantly, even if he had disorders, I will say again, doesn't matter. You're not attacking the evidence he provided, and that's what you have to do. This message must reach the international union of biological science. So I don't even know if these guys actually exist. UNESCO definitely exists, but what the hell he thinks these organizations can do about anything, I don't really know. It is complete, utter crap. I'm not even going to say what the message is, because so far he hasn't given us any reason to message anybody about anything. He has not disproven evolution at all. This is all utter bullshit. Again, he hasn't disproved evolution. And so to tell a biology student what their motto should be is just absolutely bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Their motto should be, I want to learn as many true things as possible. That should be the motto if they're going to have one. But this thing about evolution, he hasn't done anything to disprove evolution. So calling for anything to be done about it is at this point, at best, premature. Spreading the fact that the theory of evolution is just an illusion and a myth, it is an educational requirement. Yes, no matter how many times you repeat it, does not make it true. All right, so let's talk about this. Nazis, neo-Nazis, religious fanatics. No, it's religious fanatics who are denying evolution. I don't know of any terrorists that are actually pro-evolution at the moment. Nazis used the theory, but if you're going to say, well, Nazis used the theory of evolution to advance their own stupidity, then let's look at the Bible and let's go look at what the Bible has justified over the years and see which one is worse. And also, nothing the Nazis said is actually true. I mean, they tried to base it on evolution, but they didn't understand what it was either. So that's utter bullshit. Let's say that Hitler actually did believe in evolution. So what? What does that have to do with the truth of evolution? Absolutely nothing, right? People kill their kids in the name of God all the time. They sacrifice their kids for God all the time. So we can go look at that. Does that mean the Bible is true? Does that mean the Quran is true? Nope, doesn't mean any of that. So this is just more bullshit and more distractions. The theory of evolution is not a science, but rather an idea for the practice. Right, sure, whatever, dude. This is more bullshit. He does nothing to actually substantiate this other than say, these people believe this too. Okay, so what? Ignorance and illiteracy of the current era is believing in the illusion and myth theory of evolution. The real biologist cannot believe what Darwin said and what his follower Richard Dawkins promotes in the current era. So again, he's picking on Richard Dawkins. Clearly, he doesn't know anything about biology, because if he did, he'd know that all of biology supports evolution. There's just no way around that fact. That he tries to is complete and utter really bullshit. But this statement has nothing to advance anything. He's again calling for remedies for something he hasn't done, which is disprove the theory of evolution. So again, he's talking. A true biology professor wants to raise a generation. True cannot teach this. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, sure, whatever, dude. You haven't proved Darwin is a liar. You haven't proved Richard Dawkins is a liar. You haven't attacked a single piece of evidence for evolution, and you need to attack all of it. You need to prove that all of the evidence we have for evolution does not support evolution. Good luck. Yeah, and again, here we have Dawkins is better off as a clown. He's not a biologist. Yes, he is. He's fully qualified. He's more qualified than you. He's definitely more qualified than me, and I'm more qualified to be a biologist than you are. And I'm not saying that bar is high, but you have not cleared it. Must begin to lose confidence in those that contain. Right. So again, more utter bullshit. We can just get rid of it. So here we go. The worst scientific misrepresentation and biological distortion that occurred in the history of science is the establishment. Right. Again, you haven't proven that evolution is false. You're calling for remedies for which you have absolutely no basis in fact to do so. So we'll just delete that. And here we go again, just more ranting and raving. Must intervene urgently. No idea why he thinks any of those people can do anything, much less disprove evolution. So guess what? Bye-bye. Um, yeah, we have done a number of experiments that show that evolution is true. That you don't know about them is your problem, not mine. There's more evidence for evolution than there is for gravity, um, but you may not believe that gravity is real. You might be a flat earther who doesn't think gravity is real. I don't know, but yeah, this is just simply you don't know anything about biology. Among the characteristics of scientific and biological practice, the necessity of denying, or yeah, blah blah blah, more blah 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 blah. Oh, this is fun. Darwin was a spy for the Victorian era. Yeah, what's your evidence here, bud? I really like to see it. Even if he was, guess what? I mean, let's grant. Okay, let's grant. He's a spy for the Victorian era. Very nice. What does that have to do with the evidence he presented in his book for the origin of species? Absolutely nothing. Um, Nothing. Nothing to do with any of that. And yeah, more ranting on Richard Dawkins, more lack of evidence, the existence of difficulties accepting the fact that theory is just lies. Yeah, right. So now we're attacking people who believe in it. So prominent creators of I don't know that Richard Dawkins has actually written a textbook on biology. He may have. Um, Darwin wrote Origin of Species, which was probably used as a textbook in some schools. Um, but yeah, no, Darwin is also dead. Um, so he can't really do much for false biological, right? Anyway. Who wants to receive a scientific correct must give a reading and listening to illusions. So again, you don't know anything about biology. So if you did, you'd know that you can't really get away from evolution and biology. Just the way they work. More ranting against Dawkins. Yeah, so let's actually talk about this as a biological fact. Why didn't a rock turn into a turtle? Because rocks don't have DNA, dumbass. So rocks can't turn into turtles. Nowhere in the theory of evolution can you actually come up with that one. A tree leaf is not a species. It is not an entire organism. It's part of an organism. And it's the origin of species, not origin of parts of species. So even the title tells you that you have no idea what he's talking about here. He is just completely, and speaking of biological ignoramuses, thank you so much for demonstrating exactly what a biological ignoramus is. Um, so yeah, this is just absolute, complete and total ignorance of the topic whatsoever. Um, so the biggest, so I mean, Dawkins talks a lot, and he's on a lot of shows, and he does quite a bit. I don't think he's the most prolific author out there, and he may not be. I mean, he's an important scientist, but I don't know that he's the most important biological scientist at the moment. He's quite elderly. I don't know if he's even still doing research. I know he's done a lot in the past, but again, so what? You haven't disproved evolution, so you can't call him a liar. For the sake of scientific correct biological, there must be global renaissance. Right. So again, you are once again trying to come up with a remedy, even though you haven't disproved a single thing of evolution. You've offered no evidence for your position. You have attacked no evidence for evolution. You've done nothing. This is just more bloviating. Biology mixed with theology is not what we got. Yeah, sure it will. Yeah, more ranting. No, show me where he thought any of that again. Because again, it's the origin of species. Leaves are a part of a tree. Trees have species, but that has absolutely none of this is absolutely correct. Trees and butterflies have very different evolutionary lines. Again, the author shows complete and total ignorance of anything regarding evolution. Completely ignorant. Sticks falling through the tree in the forest are the ones that turn into snakes. No, actually, he doesn't. Again, if you're going to make this claim that Darwin thinks that sticks turn into snakes, you need to show me where in anything Darwin written he claims that, or anything like that. And you can't, because that's absolute bullshit. Sticks are part of trees. Trees, there are species of trees. So again, and trees cannot turn into what we would call snakes. I mean, eventually, could you? I mean, that'd be a really weird thing because the lineages are completely different. But you'd have to figure out how to. A tree would have to evolve some form of motivation or movement, and they don't really do that real well. I mean, this is just utter bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. No, it's not. And you need to demonstrate that. And you haven't. You haven't even demonstrated they're wrong. You haven't even demonstrated that. You haven't mentioned a single piece of evidence yet. So you're just out here wasting time. Biology colleges and institutes around the world. So what? No, this is absolute bullshit. Yeah, no. More just complete caca. Contain illusion. The theory of evolution is not fit to be. Yeah, you haven't done anything. You haven't proven a damn thing. You haven't even mentioned a single piece of actual evidence yet. So how are you doing all this? This is all just complete and total utter bullshit. Best solution to adjudicate the issue. Yeah. What the hell does the International Court? Let's read this sentence. It is better to resort to the International Court of Justice and demand the opening of a temporary scientific arbitration chamber. Huh? What do they have to do with a literal thing? Oh, and by the way, in case, I mean, he's clearly unaware of the Snopes trial, where a court found that evolution was true. And he's also completely unaware that the intelligent design's also been to court and lost. So apparently he has no idea what the hell he's talking about. He's unaware of the history. He's just ignorant of anything. And oh yeah, arbitration and right. As long as it contains calls the need for biological through it. Yeah. So again, we're just over here making remedies that don't need to be there because you haven't again attacked a single piece of evidence for evolution. We'll just get rid of it. The absence, yeah, no, none of this is true. No, none of this is true. None of this, I mean, you haven't disproven evolution at all. Yeah, so, yeah, no, none of this. You should know, oh, student of biology. I mean, how condescending bullshit can you get here? Yeah, no. The real biology teacher, yeah, real biology teachers who, yeah. So here we are, more whining, complaining, bitching, moaning, trying to offer remedies that don't mean anything. I mean, the arrogance of thinking that you know anything about biology is just astounding. We don't need to reform it because you haven't proven it's wrong. Yeah, none of this would be true, and yeah, I don't know why you think UNESCO should remain silent. They don't really have much to do with anything, especially here in the States, but yeah, garbage. Is a pedagogical, yeah, sure, dude. Oh, in the chat, yeah, right. So let's tell Chat GPT to lie because you haven't disproven evolution. Despite you saying that you would, you haven't. Denying the theory of evolution is right. Sure, it is. Nothing here. Yeah, and again, nothing here. Yeah, no. Again, he's trying to come up with all these remedies, none of which make any sense. None of which has anything to do with anything, and it's just utter nonsense. Yeah, no. Okay, that was professional and distorting. Prove it, and you haven't done that. Falsifying, yeah, so here we go again. He didn't falsify any scientific manuscripts, you moron. Clearly has no idea how any of this works. Yeah, even if he did show evidence of it, you can't. It's utter bullshit. Anyway, yeah, you just don't know what you're talking about. Diverts him from correct ball. Yeah, sure it does. Right, a refuted and showing the fact. Yeah, so if he could do that, he would have. He'd win a Nobel Prize. You're not going to win a Nobel Prize for anything you have said because you haven't said anything. Again, more garbage, more caca. Why is there no real? There is. Because they're not scientific, you moron. Yeah, so yeah, and again, more just stupid stuff he's saying. Oh, analyzing handwriting. Okay, analyzing the handwriting of Charles Darwin. While it's not impossible. Yeah. So again, you make this claim. You don't establish that you have any credentials at all to analyze anybody's handwriting for anything. Um, and none of this makes any sense. So again, if some sort of handwriting analysis was done by Charles Darwin to support your claim, then you need to cite it so we can go look at it. You just making this claim is absolute bullshit. However, let's assume he was not in a normal psychological state. That has nothing to do with whether or not his evidence is good. This has nothing to do with anything. So you're just attacking the man for no reason. You're an idiot. Doesn't matter where the image came from. Even through his position during the moment of taking pictures of him, it's just that he's not a normal person. Rather, that he was in his features of his face revealed that he was in a state of nervousness and mental disorder. Tears in his eyes. Again, let's assume that he had a mental disorder. Again, you're not attacking any of the evidence he's provided. These are posed pictures anyway. This is absolute bullshit. Gets trembling hands and stutters when he is asked by a questioner from students or researchers about. No, he doesn't. Doesn't at all. I mean, this is just absolute bullshit. Oh, the picture above. So we're going to talk about that here. Let's talk about the picture above. While he's presenting where the movement that he is in the picture is like placing the hand on the chin, was placing the hand. According to it is a movement that's only from those who are confused by what is being said to him. Citation fucking needed. The hand. If you go actually read some books on how to actually interpret body language, that is him actually thinking about something. Who knows what? We don't know what the context is. Somebody just could have asked him something completely stupid, and he's trying to figure out what the guy just said. We don't know anything about the context at all. And so, yeah. So this is just, you can't actually, we need context to put that picture in. We need to know what the question was. We need to know what all that kind of stuff was. This is a pose picture. So coming up with anything that from a pose picture is completely idiotic. And oblique manners just according to psychoanalysis that he is intellectually conflicting personality. Yeah, no. This is completely made up bullshit. Completely made up bullshit. It has nothing to do with attacking the actual evidence of evolution, but it's also absolute bullshit. Is afraid and avoids answering. He answers all of his questions. He's not afraid of debate. He goes into them all the time. Richard Dawkins is not my favorite person, but I mean, good Lord, guy, come on. Not my fault. You want to have sex with him, I guess. Yeah. All right. So, finally, here we are. We're down to 1,800 words and 11,000 characters, and we finally get to something resembling evidence. And I am just basically going off of this, the pictures and what he says here. First discovered Myanmar, the rare fossil is now in the hands of international experts who are thrilled that it has managed to remain so exquisitely intact after also centuries of existence. Cool. For a beetle taxonomist and for the entomological community as a whole, this is an exciting discovery. This is an extraordinary 99 million year old fossil in Burmese amber, We can see all the details of the external sculpturing of the wing covers and head. We can see the mouth parts. And it has a lot of tantalizing characteristics that we hypothesized early members of this family had, but we no longer have to guess. Boom! There we go. Proof for evolution. This biologist made, and probably the community as well, I don't know that he made this at all, but apparent from what he is saying, we hypothesized early members of this family had. Oh, look, they made predictions, and predictions came true. That's a sign of a good theory, right? And then we have that. Has great resemblance to its insect relatives in the world today. Yes. And then he gives us two pictures. Yeah, cool. When trying to compare the shape of the fossil of the beetle form and the shape of the beetle, there is no difference between them. An exact copy. Is it? How do you know it's an exact copy? All you have are the external characteristics. And here's the thing. You're only going to get a new body plan when that new body plan helps it to survive. You're only going to get changes you can see. And that is the only thing that we can see from this insect in amber is the body plan, what it looks like on the outside and the inside. And yeah, if the conditions under which this critter survives haven't changed, we're not going to see a whole lot. But here's the thing. Here's the thing you can't see, dumbass, which you would know if you'd studied biology, if you'd studied any of this. Maybe the diet's changed. Maybe this guy is more efficient at processing food than this guy. That would be an evolutionary change you can't see and wouldn't know about unless you went back a couple million years, captured this guy, compared them. Right? And let's say he hasn't. So what? Evolution doesn't say that every animal has to change every time, over time. It doesn't say that at all. Right? So, yeah, it doesn't really mean anything here. So you have evidence of evolution that you claim isn't evidence of evolution and is evidence against evolution because you don't understand evolution. So this is evidence for evolution. This is not evidence against evolution. A good theory allows us to make predictions about what we should expect in reality. And when those things come true, it's strong evidence for that theory, in this case, for evolution. So this doesn't actually support anything you said because you don't understand what evolution is. This is a problem. Right? And this is a problem for you. So their evidence here doesn't work. It's actually evidence for evolution, just like the guy says. And who's going to be more accurate about what this is? This guy, Michael Caterino, or you, or me. Yeah, it clearly is not what you claim. It's evidence for evolution, and so we can nuke it. But thank you so much for finally, at last, getting us to a point where we actually can look at some evidence. It's not the evidence you'd hope for, but it's evidence. And thanks for doing that. I mean, here we are, well, we can't say it's 1,468, 1,800 words left, 11,000 characters left. And we finally get to some evidence. Why didn't you just put this in the beginning? And that would have been fine. But no, you got to wait. And it's not what you think it is. Undergo morphological evolution. You don't know that anything changed. You just know the morphology doesn't change. And again, evolution is perfectly fine with that. No. Again, you don't know how DNA, yeah, absolutely nothing here. Because there really was an evolution, it would be the insects that undergo a rapid morphological change because genetic makeup with their own DNA may accelerate. No, none of that is true. None of that is true. Absolutely none of it is true. And okay, here we go. Mitchell J.S. and the molecular ecologist. A scientist wants to understand the evolutionary history of a group of organisms has some serious roadblocks. One of the most obvious of these issues, the majority of evolutionary history is gone, dead, extinct. You are left trying to understand millions of years of evolution by looking only on what is extant today. For the most part, this doesn't provide the most accurate picture. Very true. It's an acknowledgement of some of the problems we have. That doesn't disprove evolution, right? That's why when biologists say that X evolved from Y, they're usually fairly careful about what they can actually prove. Which you would know if you actually read any science papers or written any. But this again doesn't have anything to do against evolution. It just means, yeah, looking just by the fossil evidence, very difficult. We don't have fossils for everything, and the fossils only show us bones. They don't necessarily show us any of the soft tissue, any of the organs. Doesn't show us anything else that might also be changing through evolution. So it gives us a very limited picture, and that limited picture is limited by the fact that we don't, there's not a lot in the fossil record because fossils are rare, despite how many we found. So anyway, through what he said, it can be understood that what he wanted to say, that scientists seek to understand the evolutionary history. So now you're attempting to tell us what this guy actually thought without actually talking to the guy. Wow, that's just arrogant. Absolutely arrogant to put thoughts into somebody else's head. But now we're going into another piece of evidence. This is supposedly a bird. We don't know what bird. Yes, birds have changed forms. What bird is this? We don't know. He doesn't make any claims about. Well, let's go back to what he said here. Could detect even a slight difference between the fossil compared to the existing organism. So again, as evidenced by the image below, which is estimated to date between 35 and approximately 55 million years ago, which does not differ from the type. How do you know what birds? That doesn't look like a pelican. Doesn't look like a flamingo. Could it be a starling? Maybe. I don't know what bird that is. I don't know that you can actually tell what bird that is. But birds have changed significantly over centuries. That's why we have so many different bird species. But again, this is absolute nonsense. This is just connector. Did not exist in the world today. Considering the day evolved, but the truth is that they became extinct and did not evolve. Dinosaurs were subject to a violent natural disaster in their place of existence. Yeah, you don't understand anything. None of this makes any sense. Which means that no dinosaurs lived and evolved into another being. Yes, you need to demonstrate that. You can't. You haven't. You've done nothing to substantiate your claim. Here you're trying to attempt science, but you don't understand the first thing of how fossils or how organisms turn into fossils, the fossilization process. You don't understand how we know. We've got some pretty good ideas on how animals survived any extinction event. This is just utter bullshit. Oh God, this is going to be a fun one. Suppose the cows, the passage of years and centuries, that is, after about 1 million years from now, disappeared and is no longer a cow on the face of the earth. And it is known that cows have, and goats have udders and horns. Cows have horns and udders. Goats have horns and udders, but the goats did not become extinct and remain, reproduce, and multiply. Then one day, in the time of a future, a researcher interested in support of the theory of evolution comes and thinks that the existing goats are cows and have changed from one state to another over time, believing that it has evolved without knowing that during the millions, cows became extinct and disappeared from existence. So, again, I don't think you understand anything about anatomy. Is it possible that we could say that two animals that we say have a common lineage don't actually have a common lineage? Yes. That's why when you go and read those papers, you find that researchers are usually pretty careful about saying that it probably evolved from something like this. This may have been the intermediate stage until they have more definitive answers. But the problem that you have here, just using goats and cows have very, very different anatomies. And udders wouldn't even make it into the fossil record, so that's completely ridiculous. They have very different horns. They have very, very different ways that they don't even move the same. And so their bone structure is going to be very, very different. But yeah, is it possible that someone who's looking at these and looking at these things as bare minimum? Sure, that's a possibility. Um, but again, that's why you have to be careful about how you state things, um, and what you're actually claiming, and make sure that you have the evidence for it when you claim it, which you have not done. Sharks of all three types. There's more than three types of sharks, but okay. Great white, tiger, and hammerhead. Um, Again, the hammerhead is very, very different from the tiger, from the great white. We know they're all related. Um, yeah, we know they're all related in this case. I mean, good Lord, come on, dude. Your shark example doesn't get any better than the rest of it. That is just complete and total ignorance of anything regarding the biology of cows, goats, or sharks. Um, Plants, oh good. Abuse of botany in general is impossible for a plant to evolve and take another form because plants characterized by its geometrically shaped of cell and rapidly dividing, meaning that the evolution and transformation from one state to another will take place in a rapid manner, does not exceed long years, cannot exceed a few centuries. What the fuck are you trying to say here? It is impossible for a plant to evolve and take on, because it is characterized by its geometrically shape of a cell and rapidly dividing. Huh? Yeah. You need someplace to. I mean, if you had actually posted a link to what you're talking about here, I could have figured out what you're talking about. Um, Trees are differentiated by how their trunks grow, how they branch, leaf shape, roots. I mean, the whole thing. Geometry shaped. I don't know what any of this means. It's just it clearly you have demonstrated you don't know how trees and plants species are determined. Um, and humans be observing well known. Yeah, so humans, bananas exist because of humans. There are a number of plants that it derived from the wild mustards. I think sprouts and are some of those, but most of the food we eat today, especially the plant variety, has been shaped by human hands and human cultivation, including wheat and corn. Um, so again, you are completely ignorant of anything regarding evolution, regarding plants, regarding how humans have influenced plant evolution in particular. I mean, we talk about bananas and plantains, for instance. We can talk about wine and grapes, wheat, corn, almost everything we eat in terms of plant life uh, got its start well before modern agriculture and is completely influenced by humans. We have directed the evolution of most of what we've eaten over centuries and millennia. So that you're ignorant of this goes without saying. So, and again, and then we enter the psychological state. Once again, dude, come on. That's just worthless bloviating. Neanderthals, which advocates the myth of evolution, is the ancestor of the current human. No, they're cousins. We don't actually, yeah. You don't know anything about Neanderthals, and you have done no actual research. Maybe you have read one or two articles, but that would be at best. Yeah, so you don't know anything. You don't cite any of this to support any of your stuff, so we just get rid of it because you've provided no evidence for your claims, but also none of this is actually true. The existence of Neanderthals, despite all of our evidence they do exist, and you have done nothing to actually attack the existence of Neanderthals as a separate species that humans bred with. So, yeah. Happens to the mind. Yeah, no, you don't know what evolution is. Um, you don't know. I mean, you're just more ignorance. No evidence whatsoever. Evolution is false. So we're going to delete that. The real evolution is humans making discover things that are beneficial. Yes. And guess what? Most of our antivirals and antibacterials all come from, guess what? Our understanding of evolution. No, he really is a biologist. Yeah, and it's just more utter bullshit. And there we go. Mohammed Babu, theatrical criticism. Dude, you can't criticize. Yeah, this is amateur of sciences. So you have a master's degree in criticism, but you're an amateur writer of very short stories, plays, and scientific. This isn't a scientific or philosophical article, so this doesn't count. This is absolute bullshit. So what do we have? That's what we're left with, folks. Absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. All those words, all those characters that we started with at the beginning to end up with nothing. The only two pieces of scientific evidence actually presented, both of which support evolution, despite his claims to the contrary, because he doesn't understand anything about biology. What an absolute moron. Well, he's not. He may be a smart guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say moron. But just how ignorant do you have to be to write all of those words and have absolutely nothing to show for it? No demonstration you understand what biology is. No demonstration you understand what evolution is. You've never defined evolution. You don't define evolution as Darwin presented it. You don't use the modern definition of evolution. You don't ever define it. You don't ever actually attack any of the lines of evidence for it. And you know what? I can grant anybody that the fossil record does not support evolution, and you've not done a damn thing to disprove evolution. Not a damn thing. That's just a fact. So anyway, we're at the end. He has done nothing to disprove evolution. He did a lot of whining, a lot of complaining, a lot of ad hominem attacks, and a whole lot of trying to appeal to people who really can't do anything because evolution is simply a fact. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this short one. This is actually probably my first video. It is low-hanging fruit, I admit, but it's entertaining. And this guy was begging somebody to do a YouTube video for him, and I thought I would do that. Thanks.